at Middlebury College. I'm Instrutor Pirata. I'm the one teaching Capoeira at your college. So today we're going to speak about a little bit of Capoeira history. Now, Capoeira is a Brazilian martial art. It comes from Brazil, it was conceived in Brazil, but its roots are African in nature. So what happened is that during the slavery period, the slave vendors would take slaves that they captured in Africa and bring them over to Brazil to sell into the slave trade. Now, it is believed that the slaves were not allowed to practice any forms of combat or martial arts or self-defense. So what they did is that they took elements of their African fighting systems and that they mixed with dance, theatrics, music, singing, and camouflage the martial arts behind all of that dance. So that's how they camouflage capoeira, the martial art, behind the dance. Now, it is believed that the slaves used capoeira to free themselves eventually throughout the story of Brazil and capoeira. When slavery was abolished, the slaves were left with nothing, no education, no work possibilities. So capoeira became something very frowned upon in Brazil. It became something that was linked to gangs and marginalized people. So capoeira was made illegal at some point. So if somebody in the street would be caught doing capoeira or to show that they have some kind of agility, they would be sent to jail, and that was it. They would be sent to jail or sent to some islands, some prison islands in Brazil, and some of them would go as far as to cut their extended to make sure that they would not practice capoeira anymore. But eventually, Mestre Manuel dos Reis Machados, made a demonstration for Brazil's Prime Minister, Getúlio Vargas. And the Prime Minister was so amazed by the display of Brazilian culture, which was the demonstration of capoeira, that he decided to legalize capoeira and to help capoeira's image become more accepted. So now we're going to talk about Mestres and Styles. So we have, for Capoeira Angola, we have Mestre Pastinha. He's the most renowned mestre one of the most renowned mestres in Capoeira, associated with Capoeira Angola. He is seen as, we could say, the Grand Master of Capoeira Angola. He's not the one who created it, but he's one very important figure of that style. Capoeira Angola is a style of capoeira that's mostly played closer to the ground and slower, but it is not limited to being close to the ground and slow games. It can also be played standing up, and it can also go fast. A lot of people think and sometimes debate that Capoeira Angola has no hits or it's not aggressive at all, but it really depends on where you see that capoeira being played. If you go to Brazil and you look at Roda de Angolas, you will see sometimes that people do get hit. It can also be played in, not that it's an aggressive game, but it's sneaky. Sneaky is what I was looking for. It won't look like an aggressive game, but it will be very sneaky. Like hits will come from a position that you would not expect, but those hits are really sneaky. You can get a heel to your mouth, never see where it came from, and you might lose teeth and you might bleed as well, like any other martial art when it's put into practice. A lot of people debate that Capoeira Angola is just a dance. Yeah, it depends on the academy's view on capoeira. Some people like to push capoeira as being a dance only. Some other capoeiristas like to push capoeira as being a martial arts only. Some like to really play a bit in between both. So that's for Capoeira de Angola. Capoeira Regional, created by Mestre Bimba, Manuel dos Reis Machados. So he's the one who created Capoeira Regional. His father was a Batuque champion. Now Batuque was a type of wrestling fighting system that existed in Bahia. They would sweep each other with their feet and take each other down. So that was the purpose of that type of wrestling. They would just sweep and do takedowns. He incorporated techniques from Batuque into capoeira. Capoeira kept on evolving, and some people will say that capoeira borrowed movements from other martial arts, like karate for some kicks, But if you compare any other martial arts, it's pretty hard to say which martial art a certain kick originated from, because every martial art has kicks, every martial arts has similar kicks. So it's really hard to say. We can't really say that capoeira borrowed from a certain martial art. If you're going to fight, you're going to use what you have. Knees, elbows, head, hands, feet, legs, chins. You're going to use everything that's at your disposal. Now, so we have Mestre Pastinha, Mestre Bimba, two of the most renowned capoeira mestres, important figures for capoeira. Now, when we talk about styles, capoeira de Angola, capoeira regional, and we have capoeira contemporânea, which is the style that we do at Equipe Capoeira Brasileira. Capoeira contemporânea is a capoeira that's, some people will say it's in between both styles, in between Angola and in between regional. Some people will say that. We can play Angola, we can play regional, we also play Benguela. Benguela is not a style, but it's only a game. Benguela was created by Mestre Bimba. Some people call it Banguela, so either Banguela or Benguela. It's a game that was created by Mestre Bimba with the purpose of calming down the mood of a roda. The roda is the circle in which you play capoeira. So if the roda would become too aggressive and too combat oriented, they would go to Benguela to calm the capoeiristas down, and they would have to kind of break the way that they're playing capoeira. They would have to work on the flow. They would have to work on the sneakiness a little bit more. So it's a style that resembles capoeira Angola. Now, the way that we play Benguela today is not necessarily the way that Benguela was played in Mestre Bimba's days. Because for a certain amount of time, since there's no written documentation in capoeira for a certain period of time, it's very hard to determine with certainty exactly what was what. So since Benguela disappeared for a period of time, studies were made, research was made to research what Benguela was and to recreate it. So to recreate Benguela, they influenced themselves they inspired themselves on Capoeira de Angola, the way that the game works, and they just applied it to this new game that they created now called Benguela. Is it the same as before? Maybe not, but it serves the same purpose. So with Mestre Bimba, who had a capoeira style more combat oriented, we then evolved to Capoeira Contemporânea, which can play a little bit into everything. We can go play Angola, we can play Regional and Benguela. Capoeira has evolved a lot. You can see the capoeira has been coming out of Brazil and being implanted in a lot of different countries. So capoeira is all over the world right now. Now, if you go to Brazil and you look for capoeira, you're gonna find all types of capoeira. But one of the styles that you'll find the most is most likely going to be capoeira contemporânea. I believe 90%. I was told by one of my teachers that about 90% of Brazil plays capoeira contemporânea as opposed to the other styles. Is that true? Is that not exact? It's debatable. We can see. But one thing I can tell you about capoeira is that since there's nothing for a certain amount of time, since before slavery, there's nothing written. It's very hard to determine its exact history. So you have to do your own research and your own deductions and try to recreate what you think capoeira is, because we can't say exactly what it was before slavery because the information is just not present. But from slavery and on, that's another story. There's some books that exist. You can speak with mestres all over the world and find out as much as you can about capoeira and make your own assumptions. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Equipe Capoeira Brasileira and also Middlebury. Now, Equipe Capoeira Brasileira is a group that's based in Brasília, in Brazil's capital. Now, our lineage comes from Senzala. Like a lot of other capoeira groups come from Senzala. Senzala is one of possibly the first capoeira groups recognized to have existed in Brazil. So, one mestre called Mestre Adilson was a student of the group Capoeira Senzala. He became mestre in that group. He got the red corda in Capoeira Senzala. He was graduated mestre, and he created his own group afterwards. He separated from Senzala and created his own group. He called it Capoeira Mestre Adilson. So So he trained a bunch of capoeiristas, and these people came up and eventually became teachers as well. Now, at one point, Mestre Edson decided to stop teaching capoeira, but the students that he was teaching wanted to continue. And some of them were already pretty advanced, so they kept on training with each other. And then we have one person who was graduated Mestre by other masters from other groups, and that teacher who became Mestre, along with the other students and other teachers of the group, created Escola Brasileira de Capoeira. So this was a new group formed, and they built that together. It was that regroupment of people, of capoeiristas, who created that group. So Escola Brasileira split in two. Half of it stayed Escola Brasileira, and the other half became Equipe Capoeira Brasileira. This group, our group, Equipe Capoeira, is led by Mestre Chumbinho in Brasilia, and it's led by Mestre Peninha in Canada. Now, it's pretty much the same story as Escola Brasileira. It's all the founding members created the group, so they're all the ones who hold it together. So that's the story that's our lineage for Equipe Capoeira Brasileira. Mestre Peninha, when he first left Brazil, he came to stay in the United States. So while he was staying in the United States, he started teaching capoeira in Lake Placid, Saranac Lake, Plattsburgh, and Middlebury, Vermont. So he started teaching in the universities there and starting some projects. He's been teaching there for a while. Then he moved to Canada. Then we've had somebody else in the United States who has taken over the mantle for him. We had Malandragem, who kept on the legacy going for Mr. Peninha. And now that torch has been passed on to me to work with you guys with capoeira. So that's our lineage. That's how we came to be there in Middlebury. So we have a story about, we could say about 10 years. We've been there for about 10 years, I believe, working with different universities and colleges and making capoeira grow with your community. Okay, let's talk about the graduation systems. This is how the colleges work. It's very similar to karate or taekwondo in the colors, the progression. We start with a white cord. That's when you're a beginner. You use the white cord. When you go to the batizado, I'll explain what the batizado is in a minute. You get your first rank. Your first rank would be white and yellow, half cords, half and half. Then after that, you move on to full yellow. Then comes yellow, orange, 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 blue, blue. Once you're blue, you're graduado, which is you're an advanced student, basically, graduado, which would translate to a graduate student. After graduado, you get blue-green, which is graduado second level, we could say. Then green, full green. Full green is formado. Formado is the first rank teacher. At formado, you became a teacher. You can now start teaching capoeira. You can have your own students, and that's your first teacher rank. And you can start participating in other events and as a guest and help baptize other students into capoeira and give them their new graduations. After formado, at the green cord, we go to green purple. Purple, full on purple, is instructor. After instructor, we move on to purple and brown. Then brown, which is professor. After brown, we have brown and red, which is mestrando, becoming a mestre. And then we have red, which is mestre. So these are the graduations. Now the batizado. Batizado is a ceremony where people are initiated into the art of capoeira and where they are recognized as capoeiristas. The translation would be baptism, because you get a nickname associated to you, given to you in capoeira. So the student has a white cord, and he's going to play with some masters of the art. And at a certain point, he's going to be taken down, and he's going to receive his first cord. When he receives his first cord, he's also going to receive his nickname for capoeira. So that's what a batizado is. For everybody else who's gone through the batizado, the first cord, getting the yellow, white and yellow, after that is what we call troca de corda. You just change a cord. You're not getting baptized again. You already got baptized when you got your first cord. So after that, it's only changing levels. Now, the story behind the nickname is that back in the days of slavery, when the slaves needed to fend for themselves to get when the ex-slaves needed to fend for themselves and feed their families, and they would have to steal or get into some fights or whatnot, they would use nicknames so that people would not know their real name and know exactly who we're talking about. So that's where the tradition things come. That's where the tradition comes of getting a nickname. So when we talk about Mestre Bimba, for example, his real name is Manuel dos Reis Machados, but his nickname is Bimba. If we look at our Mestre Peninha, Peninha means feather, little feather, because when he started capoeira, he was very skinny and light. So that's why they call him Mestre Peninha. So every nickname has a little story behind it. It's an attribute to the person who uses the name. Now, let's talk about, for some of the more advanced students, what is Malandragem, Malícia, Mandinga? Good question. Malandragem is the way that we could translate malandragem would be to be sneaky, to be sly like a fox, to be able to get out of a sticky situation and have the street smarts to play around with it. So malandragem would be kind of a definition for malandragem. There's no exact translation for it. So when you're playing capoeira, you cannot show exactly what your intention is. You have to hide it. So you need to set up a certain trap for you to capoeirista. So you might start to do a movement and make the person think you're going into a certain direction or going for a certain move. And when the person catches the bait, that's when you switch it up on them and make them fall into your trap. So you fake that you're gonna do maybe a certain kick. The person might respond with a kick and you respond with a sweep. So you need to set up a trap to make the person fall into your game. That would be what malandragem is. Now, Malícia, some people sometimes might not confuse but mix the meanings. Sometimes it can really go depending on what a certain meste's interpretation is. Malícia is very comparable to malandragem. You need to be sneaky, sly. But Malícia would be a little bit more in the sense of getting a hit on a person, because you can be sneaky with malandragem, making the person believe something and then catching them off guard with something else. But with Malícia, my understanding from the translation would be that it's not negative, but more aimed into an attack towards the other person, like. You're going to set up a trap, but that's going to really catch a person off guard, and it might be a stronger hit. That's debatable. I think we can debate a lot on Malandragem and Malícia. They're very similar. What's our next one? Mandinga. Mandinga would be a way of moving, in the way that I understand it. It's not a certain move. It's a way of moving. It's the feeling of capoeira, how it comes out in your body expression, how you're moving around with it. I believe that would be Mandinga. That's something that you're going to see when you pay close attention to the capoeirista. He's going to have a certain way of moving. He won't be in a certain stance like in karate. Even if you watch the ginga, when a person does the ginga, it might not be just a square ginga where everything is just clear cut. Oh, ginga to the left, or ginga to the right. No, there's going to be a lot more movements into his application of the ginga. So all of these movements included in your ginga, in your way of moving, is what we would refer to as Mandinga.